Well, there are no prizes for guessing what we're going to be talking about today. In response to a lot of demands to talk about the US election, and because I just can't get enough of talking about politics, especially when it's mixed with astrology, we're going to be talking about the US election. It's Hillary versus Donald. So, in the blue corner from Chicago, we have Hillary Rodham Clinton. And in the red corner from Jamaica, New York, we have Donald John Trump. And at this moment, I can imagine Hillary coming down with her boxing gloves and her shiny blue kimono. And from the other end, we have Donald, and he's probably wearing shiny leopard skin shorts, and he's got his boxing gloves on, and they are ready for a fight. I think right now we need a blast of Eye of the Tiger or something of the sort. So, I'm dividing this into two. We're first going to talk about Hillary in this section, and in part two, I'll be talking about Donald Trump. So Hillary, of course, Scorpio, born in Chicago. We've got her chart here, and America seemed to like presidents from the fixed signs. Obama and Bill Clinton are Leo, Ronald Reagan Aquarius, and then also the second Roosevelt and Hoover were also from the fixed signs, and they have had two Scorpio presidents way back. So obviously America liked the fixed signs, but there's of course loads more to it than that. So the first thing, I found there were various times of birth for Hillary online. I wasn't quite satisfied with them all, so I did my own tweaking based on all the events in her life. Of course, there have been loads of them, haven't they? And this is the chart that I've come up with. So she's exhibiting a Sagittarius ascendant with Jupiter in the first house, Jupiter right up there near the ascendant. And the thing that immediately stands out to me at this chart is Neptune, which is the most elevated planet. It's up here on the midheaven. The midheaven signifies everything to do with public persona, public image, and when you're in politics, your public perception. And then we have planet Neptune. So I'm quite curious because Neptune, which also happens to be activated by transiting Pluto right now in Hillary's chart, it was also activated in Theresa May's chart, and it is active in Donald Trump's chart. So I'm wondering, what is the planet that has to do with showbiz showing up in all these politicians' charts? And then I thought about what George Galloway says. Politics is show business for ugly people. Well, I don't know. That sounds a bit cruel, that. Maybe politics is showbiz for intelligent people. But the other reason I think Neptune shows up in the charts is that old adage, every political career ends in disaster. So that's true. Neptune does signify disappointment, disaster, and I suppose the way most political, even the best political careers end is in disaster, because they never seem to know when to quit while on top. But the other more significant thing I'm thinking about Neptune being there is Hillary Clinton and the Clintons in general, their name has become synonymous with scandal. And Neptune is the planet which represents scandal. So they're the most elevated planet, their public perception is related to intrigue and scandal and rumor. And in recent surveys, it was said that 70% of people didn't trust Hillary. So with Neptune there are big issues with public confidence and public trust. So right now, Pluto's been moving through Capricorn over here, and it's been making a square to that Neptune, which is quite relevant because Neptune rules her third house over here of communications. So I'm thinking about the scandal to do with the emails right now, and Pluto bringing that to the fore. But of course, when it comes to the Clintons, there's been the Whitewater thing, Paula Jones, Monica Lewinsky, Benghazi, the emails, WikiLeaks assertions that are coming out right now, and many more. I mean, the fact that you're watching me on YouTube means I probably don't have to tell you how many things have been connected to the Clintons over time, and that has definitely eroded public confidence, and it probably reflects how most people in the world are feeling right now. We just don't trust politicians, and with this new era of internet, we get to find out more and more and to share that information, and that's fueling our distrust. So what else does Hillary have going on in her chart? She has the moon in Pisces. Now that shows a very strong emotional and almost spiritual connection to the mother, and Hillary was very, very close to her mother. What it also shows is there is a compassionate, caring side to her. But the fact that this moon in Pisces is being squared off by her Uranus over here in the 7th house seems to me that she's quite erratic emotionally. So while she can have care and compassion, it doesn't seem to last long before it's moved to the next thing. And she doesn't sort of stick with one thing and work on that. It's sort of being blown by the wind. You know, one minute she's against gay marriage, then she's for it. It seems a little like dog whistle politics, where she's following the mood of public opinion rather than going with her gut. Also seems to indicate to me that she can be influenced by others, and she's not always secure enough with her own convictions, and she allows herself, even though she's such a strong, tough woman in other ways, emotionally she can be kind of swayed by the opinions of other people. Now the next thing I was really interested to see in her chart is up here in the 8th house we have 3 planets. Now if you remember, Nigel Farage also has 3 planets in his 8th house, but with him he's got all the personal planets there. Now Hilary also has Mars, the same as Nigel Farage, but she has the power planets of Saturn and Pluto in this 8th house. So that says to me, you know, Saturn and Pluto together, absolute power. And the 8th house is the house of other people's money. It's where you look to get funding that's beyond your own personal finances. And that of course says to me that her backers, the people behind her, are incredibly powerful. They are the kingmakers, the movers and shakers, the people who can really make things happen. And they're in her corner. So of course we know, you know, she's got the media behind her. Some people call it the Clinton News Network. She's got the bankers behind her, the whole establishment. Michael Bloomberg, even though he was a Republican, was at her convention, putting his weight behind her. She's got the celebrities behind her. She's got all the money, Goldman Sachs. The weight of everything is behind Hilary. Plus, she's on board with all the things that the establishment are on board with, like she's on board with GMO, she's in with the climate change scenario. She is establishment through and through. And that gives her an awful lot of power. I'm looking at this chart and thinking that for anyone to compete against someone with this kind of backing is going to be very, very difficult. So that certainly is massively in her favor, all this power. But at the same time, because the 8th house is so overloaded with these planets, I'm thinking there's a lack of independence in her chart, where there's a great deal of influence coming in from the outside. So you don't really know who's pulling the strings. It's definitely a ruthless world. She moves in, she knows how to handle that. She knows a lot of Rottweilers and people who are going to bite into anyone that crosses her. So this is definitely a chart where there's a lot of power. But I'm also thinking, even though she's got the experts behind her and all the celebrities and whatnot, that was actually mirrored by our situation here in Brexit, where the In campaign had those very same people behind them, even other world leaders. Just recently, Francois Hollande was coming out and is speaking disparagingly about Donald Trump. Well, I'd say, you know, glass houses, Mr. Hollande. But just like with Brexit, the world leaders are coming out, other than Putin, against Donald Trump and for Hillary. But like Michael Gove said, people are sick of experts. And I think that mirrors this whole thing that we have going on now, where people are anti-establishment. We have Uranus, which is in Aries. Now that's a really feisty, kind of rebellious thing going on. That's moving retrograde. We have Pluto in Capricorn moving forwards, and these two, at the time of the American election, will be squaring up with only a 3-degree orb between them. And it says to me that's stimulating this whole vibe in the sort of the unconscious of collective unconsciousness of people for change, for some real change, to give the establishment a bloody nose. Or as Donald Trump would say, I'd like to punch him in the face. Well, that's what the public are looking to do. So I think that's what Hillary is up against. She has all these backers. She is part of the establishment, but that's exactly what is antagonizing people right now, because they're getting this whole us against them. Yes, it's the rest of the country versus the metropolitan elite. Who's going to win? Now what else? Hillary does have her sun in her 10th house, which is all about politics, power, holding high public office. She has Mercury, which is conjunct to Venus. Now that usually gives charm, diplomacy, ability to negotiate, quite affable, a pleasing personality, someone who's quite personable. When it's in Scorpio, however, there is a kind of wolf in sheep's clothing element to it, where although she comes across as being rather friendly and quite personable, people feel there's an edge to it. They feel there's an agenda behind it, and it might be the means to an end. And that's why a lot of people say about Hillary, she doesn't have that immediate aura that an Obama or a Clinton have, where they walk into a room and they're everyone's best buddy, and they're not only charming, but really kind of down to earth and friendly. People want to get on with them immediately. She doesn't really have that immediate connection with other people. There's a certain aloofness about her, a certain coolness, so she's not connecting with people quite as well. So what do the transits say about what's going on with Hillary? Well, Pluto over here, as we've talked about, it's been squaring up to Neptune, but that really is what's been causing her quite a bit of trouble, what with the email and all these allegations coming out that are making people have this great lack of trust, this uneasiness, because this is quite a secretive chart. Apart from the ascendant in Sagittarius and Jupiter near the ascendant, the rest of the chart is not very transparent. It's quite secretive, quite clandestine, and I think people are picking up on that and perceiving that. Now, while Pluto is also squaring her midheaven, which would be a really good sign because the midheaven is all about achieving power and Pluto is the embodiment of that power, it's moving off by the time of the election. It's moving away. And as we saw with Nigel Farage and also with Andrea Leveson, Pluto was helping them out a lot. They soared up, they soared in popularity, both at different times. They had a lot of public influence. But when it actually came to the election, or in Andrea's case, trying to go for the leadership of the Tory party, it had gone off the boil a little bit. And I feel with Hilary, she's also going off the boil. Because if you think back to a year ago, CNN was saying Donald Trump had only a 1% chance of even winning the Republican nomination, never mind the presidency. And he showed them to be wrong. He's confounded everybody. And Hillary was looking at absolutely dead cert. I thought so myself. I looked at her chart. I thought, you know, how can it be? She's been ordained by this from as way back as 2008. But now I see Pluto moving off. I think she's gone off the boil a little bit, and although she's had a bounce from her convention, she's not quite as solid in this position as a lot of people thought. More and more people are beginning to think that Trump actually has a chance, and who would have said that before? I mean, it seemed a crazy thing to say. The other thing that's going on in Hillary's chart, which I think portends a kind of more negative influence, is Lilith. Now, I don't know if any of you guys remember in the series Fraser Crane, his ex-wife was called Lilith, and she was made out to be kind of the devil incarnate. So I think whoever wrote that program knew quite a bit about astrology, because they know that Lilith rarely brings anything good. Lilith is not actually a planet, it's what we call the dark moon, and it's usually quite a negative, disappointing, really challenging influence. And at the time of the election, Lilith is moving to be very close to Hillary's ascendant. And so I think that doesn't, Lilith always casts a shadow of negativity, so that's not a particularly lucky thing that's going on. So there's not much else to say about her transits, but in terms of her solar arc directions, we have, I know it's a little bit too low on the screen here, but I'm just going to be reading it off there. Her solar arc Neptune is conjunct her ascendant. Now, I talked about how Neptune has been present in quite a few political charts, like Theresa May. So the fact that Neptune is so closely linked to her midheaven, to her political aspirations, the fact that it's on a very sensitive part of the chart, the ascendant, is a good thing. It means that, there's been a process going on for most of her life. She's been working towards this point, and now there's a kind of fulfillment of this process represented by Neptune here. So that's where I think, oh well, that's not looking too terrible. Next thing is Sun. Her Sun has moved to be square to Neptune. So again, it's squaring Neptune right on the midheaven, linking with her career ambitions and a fulfillment of that. So with those two signs, I'd say it doesn't look too bad, but when you've got Neptune, it's such a crazy planet. You can never look at it alone and say just because Neptune is linked to the 10th house and that there's going to be a positive outcome in terms of career, because Neptune confuses things, it muddies the water. Too much Neptune, never a good thing. So when I look at that, I also feel that this is nowhere near a dead cert. The next thing she's got is Mercury, which will be squaring her Sun, and the ascendant, which will be squaring her Jupiter. Both relevant because Sun in the 10th house of leadership, and Jupiter is right near the ascendant. Jupiter's all about political ambition, power and career. But those particular solar arcs are not quite in range yet, so she might not be feeling their effect at the right time, the time of the election. So while I was really positive when I first looked at Hillary's chart and thinking that there was that she was going to be a definite, the more I've looked at it, the more that I see that it's not quite what it seems, and that there could be a lot more developments running up to the election that could be potentially damaging, and that it's definitely not, no, it's not looking to me a dead cert. I definitely say that. I think where else Hillary is losing out is she hasn't come across strong enough on certain issues that are close to the public public's heart. She's very rational, she's very calm. But as we saw in the Brexit campaign, people get very tired of the whole rationality, the facts, the figures. They're far more emotionally driven. I remember when there was the terror attack, I think it was in Belgium at the airport and at the metro in Brussels. Donald Trump came out and he said, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to ban all Muslims from coming to the United States before we know what was going on. And he said some outrageous things, but it grabbed attention. And when I think back now, I can remember what Donald said. I don't really remember what Hilary said. I don't know if she said anything at all. So although what he said may have been outrageous, what stuck in my mind was that he seemed concerned about the matter, and he was eager to do something, whereas Hilary seemed to be in denial about it. Now, a lot of people, particularly here in the UK, will say things like, oh, God, we're scared of Donald Trump. Don't let him near that nuclear button. You know, like there's a button on the Oval Office table that's the nuclear button that he could sort of, you know, fall over by mistake and hit. I don't think it's that easy. And I don't think there's need for a journalist in the UK to be that concerned, because I doubt he's going to nuke Hampstead, guys. So do calm down, dears. But when I look at Hilary's chart, this chart is hawkish. And when I think of Donald Trump's chart, he's a lover, not a fighter. So I think people have probably got the wrong idea there. And if they look back at what has been going on in American politics since Obama and Hillary in charge from 2008 in terms of foreign policy, is they took off exactly where Bush left off with the relentless bombing of northern Pakistan. And we've had what's gone on in Libya, Yemen, Ukraine, and it was always known that you don't mess with Syria because it's a direct provocation to Iran and to Russia. Yet what did they go and do? They went and messed with Syria, and we know how that worked out. So it seems that really a lot of what's been going on is almost looking to provoke Russia. What about what was going on with Ukraine? And yet I see Vladimir Putin, he was on a conference, a panel discussion with Mario Renzi of Italy, and he said that Donald Trump is eager to work with Russia. And Putin said, look, this is a good thing for world peace. So there we have it from Putin's mouth. And I think that it is a good thing. They should be working with Russia rather than antagonizing Russia. That's a much better thing for world peace. So I'm not one of these people who think, oh, the world's not safe in Donald Trump's hands because he's going to, you know, bang this nuclear button for no reason at all. The other thing is, with Hilary's moon in Pisces, I think she's the new kind of brand of politician, like Angela Merkel, where it's no longer about the whole your home country. It's about globalization, internationalization. It's about the merging of countries together and the breaking down of barriers and working together. We see this by her support for things like NAFTA and TTP and even TTIP. And while there are quite a few people whom those policies would appeal to and who also feel drawn in that direction, there are also a lot of voters that really don't want that and feel threatened by that. And therefore, that is something that Donald Trump is going to play on and go for, because those are votes in the bag for him, for people who are not really keen on that approach. Okay, so I think we've had a really good look at Hilary's chart. What I'd say, she's a very tough, determined, hard-working woman. She's got a good head on her. She's got good diplomatic, good negotiating skills. She can be quite manipulative. She knows the political game really well. She knows how to inspire confidence with a Sagittarius rising and say positive things and exhibit a very proactive, progressive agenda. She is a political animal. This chart says this person's great at politics. And look, if I was in trouble, I'd want Hillary in my corner fighting for me. But the problem is, whose corner is she in? Who is she really fighting for? Is it the voter? Is it someone else? We really don't know. And I think that's why her chances are not possibly as good as a lot of people think they are.